When you first launch Final Cut Pro, you'll need to import some content to work with. You have a few different ways that you can import footage into Final Cut. You can choose to import files from your desktop or from any attached disk. You can choose to import directly from a camera, or you can choose to import iMovie events. If you're already an iMovie user, this can be a great way to get started quickly with Final Cut Pro. When you click this, you'll be asked to import your entire iMovie event library. However, notice that if you've already imported some of your iMovie projects, those won't be imported again. If you're not seeing this Import iMovie Events button in your Final Cut Pro, simply go up to the File menu and choose Import, either iMovie Project or iMovie Event Library. The second option will bring up the same dialog that you just saw. However, by selecting iMovie Project, you can choose an individual project to import. You can also import content from an attached camera, which includes cameras such as your iSight. Hi there. You'll notice over here on the side, you'll see a list of cameras that are connected to your computer. When you're done with this window, simply click on the Close button down here. Finally, you can also import files from anywhere else on your system. This opens up a standard import dialog where you can choose exactly the content that you want to import. Select the footage that you want and click on the Import button. And once your footage has been imported and processed, you'll be ready to start editing. When you choose to import files into Final Cut Pro, from the Open dialog box, you simply select the footage that you want to import, and then go through a series of options which determine where the content will go and how it's going to be handled. You can choose to add your content to an existing event, or to create a new event. As you import this, you can choose where you want your footage to be stored, on the current internal hard drive, or if you have other hard drives attached, you can choose to store them there. You then have a series of options on how this content is going to be handled. Let's go through these all. Under Organizing, you'll see that you can choose to copy files to the Final Cut Events folder or not. What that means is inside of the Finder, Final Cut Pro will create a new folder called Final Cut Events. If you choose to copy the files to that location, then the originals that you have can be discarded because they will have been copied into the Final Cut Events folder. This is a good idea if you're copying files off of a media disk that came out of your camera. However, if you plan on working straight off of your hard drive that you've already copied files to, you can leave this disabled. You can also choose to import folders as keyword collections. Notice how this content is currently in a folder called Import. That means that a keyword called Import would be attached to each one of these clips, and therefore would show up as a keyword collection in Final Cut Pro. If you've already organized your content in the Finder, this can save you a lot of time once you get into Final Cut. If you haven't organized your files in the Finder, then it probably really doesn't matter. Under Transcoding, you can choose to create optimized media and/or to create proxy media. Optimized media is Apple's own Apple ProRes codec. It's a very high quality, very optimized format that looks absolutely fantastic and is very easy to edit. If you choose not to create optimized media and you're editing native footage such as MP4, you may find that editing is a bit slower. If you plan on moving your project around to other computers, especially moving it to a laptop, you may want to choose to create proxy media. This will allow you to have a very small, lightweight, lower quality media that you can work with and easily move around between your systems. You also have choices of how your video and audio clips will be handled. Under Video, the first choice is to analyze for stabilization or rolling shutter problems. If your shots were not very stable, for example, shot with a handheld camera, or if you have a rolling shutter issue, which is quite common under the newer, more modern DSLR cameras, you may find that Final Cut Pro will find these problems for you and actually be able to repair them automatically. You can also have Final Cut Pro analyze for balanced color. This will look across your shots and look for mismatching in colors and also allow you to automatically balance out the shots to make them look even better. Final Cut Pro will also analyze your shots for people. If it finds people in the shots, it'll be able to automatically group those into single shots, doubles, or group shots, also wide or close up. Finally, at the bottom, you'll see a Create Smart Collections After Analysis option. This means that all those keywords that have been assigned to each one of those clips will automatically be assembled into a smart collection, making it incredibly easy for you to find the shot that you're looking for. You'll find a similar series of selections under Audio. You can analyze and fix common audio problems. You can separate mono and group stereo audio, and you can also remove silent channels. That's handy if you're working with a camera that records more than 2 channels of audio, but you chose not to. So for example, if you are shooting in stereo and you have a couple of extra blank audio channels, Final Cut Pro can remove those for you. Once you're done, simply click on Import, and everything starts to come in. While it's importing, you'll notice that there is a small spinning dialog here that if you click on, it'll open up to show you the active background tasks. As you can see, there's quite a bit going on in the background. There's rendering that's happening, the actual import of the media, and the transcoding to different formats, whatever you may have selected. So depending on how many of those options you choose on import will determine how many things we're seeing going on here. The great thing about this is entirely running in the background. You can close this window at any time and continue working just as normal. You may see things a little bit slower while the activity is going on, but it will never stop you from working completely. Final Cut Pro allows you to mark a clip as either a favorite or a reject. To do that, simply select a clip, and then down here you'll have a green star, a white star, and the red X. The green star will mark the clip as a favorite. And notice that there is now a green bar running across the duration of that clip. If you want to remove a rating, simply click on the white star to clear that out. Similarly, you can click on the red X to mark it as a reject. Notice as I do that there's now a red line running across the duration of the entire clip. Also, once you've marked your clips as rejects, if you go to this menu here, you can choose to hide rejected clips. And then any clip that has been rejected will disappear from view. Of course, it hasn't been deleted. At any point, you could go back up to this menu and choose to view all clips, or even choose to show just the rejected ones. If you'd like to get rid of a rejected mark, simply select it and click on the white star. Now let's go back and take a look at all clips again. As you've just seen, you can easily mark an entire clip as either a favorite or a reject. However, Final Cut Pro goes even farther than that. You can actually select and mark just a portion of a clip as either a favorite or a reject. So for example here, that portion of the clip I know is good. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that as a favorite. I also know that the portion leading up to that isn't very good. So I'm going to select that and mark it as a reject. What I may also want to do is select a middle portion, mark that as a reject, and then leave the rest unmarked. Notice now that I have a few different things going on this one clip. We have a reject, a favorite, a rejected portion again, and then of course no rating after that. This is all just one clip. However, now, if I go up to the Hide Rejected option, you'll notice that it appears to be broken into two separate clips. If you look at the name, you'll see that they are in fact the same clip. And at any point, if I choose to show the rejected footage, we'll see it all put back together again. However, this allows us to very easily select portions of clips, mark them as favorites, and then actually view them as unique clips in our event. By spending a little bit of time going through your imported footage, marking your favorites and your rejects, when it comes time to actually edit your project, you'll find it's much quicker and much more enjoyable when you have the footage that you need available at your fingertips. Keywords are an incredibly effective way of organizing your footage in Final Cut Pro. To assign a keyword, simply select a clip, click the keyword icon, which will open up the keywords dialog. From here, you can type in anything you want. Since this is a close-up shot, let's go ahead and call this close-up. Notice when I hit the return key, that keyword is automatically assigned to the clip. You may have also noticed that a keyword group was automatically created over here on the left under the event library. You don't have to assign a keyword to an entire clip. You can actually select just a portion of a clip and assign a keyword to that. In this part of the clip, we can see that the chef is adding brown sugar into the mix. So let's go ahead and select just that portion, starting right about there, and then select the keywords and type in brown sugar. Once again, when I hit return, that keyword is added to the clip. And once again, we see a new keyword collection automatically created under the event library. Let's go ahead and add another keyword to this clip here. I'll also add the keyword close up. If I open up the keyword dialog again and toggle open the keyword shortcuts, you'll notice that both keywords that I already added are now here waiting for me to add them again. I can choose to click and drag them into the keyword field, which adds them, and I can also select the keyword from there and hit delete to remove it. Or a keyboard shortcut for that, as you can see here, is Control 1. By simply tapping this button or hitting Control 1 on my keyboard will allow me to add that keyword to the clip. These are completely organizable. You can put these wherever you like, adding multiple keywords into any one of these fields as well. Now that we've added keywords to a couple of these clips, let's see what we can do by building a smart collection. Let's just say that you want to find all of the close-up shots, but only the ones that you've marked as favorites. That's the green bar on there. Remember, we've already marked both of these as close-up. So if we click on the close-up icon here, we're going to see both of those shots. But again, I only want to see the best close-ups. So let's go under My New Project here, and right-click on it, and choose to create a new Smart Collection. We're going to call this Smart Collection Best Close-Ups. To edit it, simply double-click on it, which opens up the filter editor. From here, I can add any criteria that I like. Let's start with keywords. I want to see the footage that is marked as a keyword of close-up, but that's it. So let's get rid of brown sugar. But remember, I want to see only my best. So let's add on top of this criteria a rating. And under ratings, I'll choose favorites. Make sure that this is set to select all as opposed to any. If you choose any, then of course it will combine the results. By selecting all, I'm only seeing the footage that has both the keyword close-up and has been marked as a favorite. Spending a little bit of time going through your footage, adding keywords for relevant clips, and then grouping them together using the smart keyword albums can save you a lot of time when it comes to editing. It's good to be organized, especially if you have a really large project to work with. To create a new project in Final Cut, simply click on the Create New Project icon, or in the lower left corner of the interface, click on the plus button. From here, you can name your project whatever you like, and you can also choose a default event to pull media from. Underneath that, you'll see that you have a series of video properties and audio and render properties. Usually, leaving these at their default settings is best. For example, under video properties, the default is to set automatically based on the first video clip. This means that the first clip you drag from your event into your project will automatically define the properties for that project for you. To add media to the timeline, simply click to select it, and then drag and drop it onto the timeline. If you'd like to zoom out of your timeline, you can do that here. To add another clip, simply click it to select it, and once again, drag and drop it onto the timeline. However, you notice that so far we've only selected an entire range of the clip. But you don't have to do that. You can select just a portion of the clip. You can start by clicking on a clip, which selects the entire clip, and then grabbing the beginning or the end point, and the end or the out point, and positioning those wherever you like. Once those are in place, you've now selected just that portion of the clip, which you can now drag onto your project. Another way to select is instead of clicking and then moving the handles, you can simply click and drag directly on the clip in the event browser. Once that's done, you can again click and drag that to add it to your timeline. Now so far you've noticed that we've added everything to the end of the project here. But there's a couple different ways that we can add our media onto our timeline or into our project here. I'll select another clip, and you'll notice under here that we have three different icons to choose from. There's the Connect icon, Insert, and Append. We're going to start at the end and work our way backwards. Append will add the project to the end of the timeline, no matter where your playhead currently is. So if I want to take this clip here, or let's just say a portion of it, and add this to the end of the project, I can simply click on the Append icon, and it gets added to the end. But sometimes you don't want to add something to the end of the project, you want to put it somewhere in the middle. Well, that's what the Insert icon is for. With the playhead anywhere else in the project, I can go ahead and select another piece of media here. Just take that portion there, click on Insert, and it automatically inserts that into the timeline. The last icon, which is actually the first, is something called Connect. Connect allows you to add media on top of existing clips so that you can cut back and forth between them or do other effects. But the great thing about Connect is it actually connects a clip to the main storyline and then keeps it in place as you move other media around. Let me show you what I mean. I'll grab another piece of media here. Let's say this portion here. And I'm going to position the playhead right about there, and then click on Connect. Notice that it's added a small clip above the main clip of the main storyline. Let's go ahead and scroll down so we can see a little bit more of what's going on here. Now, as I select this primary clip underneath it, and move it around, you'll notice that the connected story always stays with it. No matter how I move other pieces around in the story, this one is always in the same place. Getting to know the editing options that you have in Final Cut Pro can greatly speed up your workflow. You don't actually have to know these because Final Cut Pro makes it very easy to move footage around in the timeline. However, if you do get to learn them, then you will find your editing workflow speeds up quite a bit. Once you get started in building your project in Final Cut Pro, you'll quickly realize that you need to do more than simply grab clips and move them around the timeline. To take advantage of the other tools in Final Cut Pro, go to the little arrow menu here and click on the drop-down to select from one of the tools you have here. The primary working tool is called the Select tool, and this is where you'll spend most of your time. But underneath that, you have the Trim, Position, Range Selection, Blade, and then the Zoom and Hand tools. We'll start with the Select tool, our default. This allows us to simply click on a clip and drag it around wherever we like in the timeline. The Select tool also allows me to shorten a clip. By simply clicking and dragging on the edge of the clip, notice how the icon changes, allowing me to shorten or lengthen the duration of that clip. This is basic trimming, which is built into the Select tool. However, if you need more advanced trimming, we have the Trim tool for that. First of all, you can do the exact same thing. Lengthen or shorten a clip by clicking and dragging on the end of it. You can also click on the edit point between two clips and click and drag that. This will allow us to change both the in point and the out point of the selected clips. You can also perform something called a slip edit, where if you click and drag on the clip itself, notice that the heads and tails don't change, meaning that the duration of the clip does not change. However, I'm changing what part of the media I'm seeing or utilizing in this project. The next tool is the Position tool. The Position tool allows me to click and drag projects around the timeline, just as you've already seen. However, there is a distinct difference. Watch what happens if I go back to the Select tool. If I click on this clip here and click and drag it to the end of the timeline, notice how the gap is automatically closed up in between them. However, if I go to the Position tool and I click and drag on a clip and move it to the end of the timeline, notice that the gap does not close up. That gap is now left in place. There may be times where you want to move footage around but not change the timing of the project, and this allows you to do that. Of course, you do have a blank space in your project here that you will need to take care of at some point. The next tool is the Range Selection tool. This allows me to select just a portion of a clip that's already on the timeline. That way, if I wanted to apply a speed effect or a color effect or anything else, I could select exactly the portion of the clip that I want to apply that to. Next up, you have the Blade tool. This allows me to take an existing clip and cut it into pieces. So if I wanted to rearrange part of it, for example like so, I can easily do that. Finally, you have the Zoom and the Hand tool. The Zoom tool, of course, allows you to zoom into just a portion of the timeline, and the Hand tool allows you to easily scrub back and forth along the timeline. You'll spend most of your time in the Select tool, and learning keyboard shortcuts like Shift-Z to zoom out and see the entire project can save you a lot of time navigating your project. Learning to navigate and control your timeline view can dramatically speed up your workflow. Let's take a look at some of the options that we have. To start, down in the bottom right corner, you'll see a magnifying glass zooming in and out of your project. So you can zoom out to see the whole thing, or zoom in to get a closer up view. Next to that, you'll see a switch. If you open that switch, you'll have a couple of options here. The first is your clip appearance. You can choose to view just the audio of your timeline, or the audio with small video clips, medium, or large, or even just the video. You can also choose to view your timeline in a more traditional, simplified manner. It's nice to be able to switch between these depending on what portion of your project you're working on. Are you focusing primarily on the audio, the video, or both? Depending on the size of your screen, if you have the real estate, you can increase your clip height as well. This will give you a much larger clip to work with, which may make it easier to find exactly the portion of the timeline that you're looking for. Learning the keyboard shortcuts can be a huge time saver. The most common ones are Shift-Z, which zooms out to see your entire timeline, and then Command+ to zoom into the timeline, and Command- to zoom out of it. Notice that the timeline always zooms in to wherever the playhead is. So as I move the playhead and then hit Command+ to zoom in, or Command- to zoom out, the playhead always stays in view. And again, no matter where you are, if you hit Shift-Z, you'll immediately zoom out or zoom in to see the entire timeline. As your video projects get more and more complex, the ability to change how they look on the timeline will become quite handy. Markers are a common way to mark a part of your timeline or your edit that you want to come back to look at later. To add a marker, simply select a clip and position the playhead where you want the marker to be. Then from the Mark menu, choose Markers, Add Marker. Notice that the keyboard shortcut for this is simply the letter M. By doing that, it creates a marker on the timeline. I can double-click on that marker to edit it and call it whatever I like. Let's go ahead and call this one Boiling Raspberries. A common use for the markers is to make a note for yourself to come back to later. Let's just say that I know that I need to color correct this clip, but I don't want to deal with it right now, but I also don't want to forget. I'm going to tap the M key to create a marker, and then I'm going to tap it again to open up the editor. This time I'm going to call this marker Color Correct Me, and I'm going to turn this into a to-do item by clicking the Make To-Do Item button underneath the text. Notice that this marker has now turned the color red. Let's go ahead and do one more. On the orange here, I'm going to tap the M key twice, which creates the marker and opens up the editor. Then I'm going to call this Look for a Better Shot, and also make that a to-do item. And once I'm done, you'll see that I have 3 different markers added to my project. But if you can imagine that your project got quite large, it may be hard to locate those markers as they're just sitting here on the project itself. If you look in the lower left corner, you'll see that you have an icon to show or hide the timeline index. When you select that, at first it shows you all the different clips in your timeline. If you click on tags, you can see keywords, markers, and any other metadata that may have been applied to your clips. If I want to isolate just the markers, I can tap on the marker icon here to show just the markers in my project. And there's the Boiling Raspberries. And as I select it, you'll see that the playhead jumps immediately to that marker. I can also go in here and locate just my to-do items. So if I've made notes to myself of things I need to do in the project, I can always go back here to make sure I've completed all of my tasks. Here's one that says Color Correct Me, and another one, Look for a Better Shot. Let's just say that I've already completed the color correction on here. I'm going to go ahead and mark that as done. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that the marker became green. I can also go to a view that shows me all the completed tasks, and I can see that that has now been done. And of course, if I want to uncheck that, I can do that as well. It will now show up under the uncompleted to-dos. Markers are a fantastic way to make notes on your footage and just keep track of things and where they are. When it comes time to play your project, you have a few different options. Under the main viewer, you have a play button that you can simply tap on and off to play the project or to pause it. To the right of that, you'll see that you have a couple of arrows that allow you to go back to the previous edit or forward to the next one. Notice that the playhead in the timeline is moving along with you. To the left of the playhead, you can navigate one frame at a time, backwards or forwards. While you're watching your project, if you want it to loop over and over again, you have a loop button over here on the right. As you toggle that on and off, it'll allow you to play the entire project over and over again, or just play to the end and then stop. And once you're ready to see your project in full screen, you can simply click on the full screen icon. To stop playback, you can also just use the space bar. When you want to get out of full screen, just tap the escape key.